Welcome. In this video, I'll be focusing on the service events log that shows in the Callisto dashboard. I'll try to explain what the data here means and how you can use it to help understand and resolve various types of access problems that can occur with your eResource subscriptions. I'll start by turning on the help view and point out that we have on the screen a list explaining all of the different types of events that Callisto can detect. Each of these is detected automatically by Callisto once you have it operating. I won't go through each of these in detail, you can read them, but some of the most important and common ones are access lost, provider error or provider unavailable, subscription label changed, and if you have the Callisto Pro service, you will also sometimes see titles changed. Access lost is probably the most important thing to look for, because that indicates that Callisto saw that you did have access to some subscription resource, but you no longer do, from at least a part of your campus. If you're not familiar with how Callisto can track from multiple networks yet, I suggest you first view the video called Callisto Tour Access Status Overview, and then come back and revisit this one. Provider error means that when Callisto tried to connect to the website for a resource, it found that it was responding but in an abnormal and problematic way. So it's either broken or overloaded or down for maintenance of some type. Provider unavailable is also a type of downtime at the provider end, but it means Callisto wasn't even able to connect at all. The reason Callisto distinguishes between these two situations is that in rare situations, there could be a problem with the network at your campus that is preventing either Callisto or your users from being able to connect to a resource, even though it's actually operating fine for the rest of the world. In situations like that, a number of content providers will be shown as unavailable to your Callisto rather than one or two isolated situations. In the other video to which I just referred, in Access Status Overview, I talked about what the subscription labels are and how they are recorded. Whenever Callisto sees one change or disappear, that would be called missing, it will record an event in the system. So let's close the help here and take a look at some data. So I've filtered the screen to show the citation resource at the moment. And this is by default a chronological list of all of the changes that Callisto has detected for that provider. In this case, Cornell has 4 different access routes operating, so the screen here unfortunately can look rather cluttered in many cases, because what's happening is Callisto is detecting the same problem or the same change from each of those 4 networks and reports each of those in detail here. So as an example, when the website for citation is malfunctioning, it shows as an error. You can see over here, provider error. We can see when that was first detected. So in this particular instance on June 12th, it was first detected by Callisto at 9:29 in the morning. And then that triggered Callisto to check from the other locations as well. So it found that problem in occurrence on all 4 of those routes or networks. And then for each one of them, as soon as it saw that the problem had been fixed, it marks a date stamp here in the resolved at column, so that you know that it was a problem, but it has been fixed by the provider. Now there are several ways that Callisto can send you information or that you can view data from it. The access status screen shows the most current status from each location and provider. This, as I said, is the chronological detail of all the changes over time. And also in the Callisto Pro service, you can get automatic email notification. We call them alerts, and you can configure those with the alertees screen up here. So one of the important things that we've done to help reduce the information overload potential is that the system will automatically notice that these 4 event changes here are the same fundamental event for the same provider. They're just from different locations and they overlap in time. So the system would collapse all of that into only one alert by email rather than 4 separate ones. Same way with this up here on the provider error. These all overlap in time, so the system knows that they are different aspects of the same root problem. When a subscription label changes, sometimes that's a cause for concern. It may indicate that the wrong institution has overlaid your subscription, for example, so you should always review that content either here on the access status screen, or if you have the alerts, you can see that there as well. By clicking the yes here and pulling up that screen, we can see exactly what changed. In this case, we can see it's not a problem at all. The co-branding has a very subtle change from Cornell University to Cornell University Library. So not a problem at all, and you don't need to worry about it. The event screen is so detailed and contains so much history for your site that it can quickly look overwhelming. So the search feature on this screen is more important than it is on any of the other dashboard screens. In most cases, when you are consulting this, you will have some specific suspected or reported problem in mind. So for example, let's suppose that you've been contacted by a faculty member on your campus who says she was unable to retrieve a journal article she needed from the British Medical Journal. BMJ being one of the content providers we track, you can come to the event screen and type BMJ in the search to filter out all the other hundreds of content providers. So here you can see all the changes and problems that have been detected from your campus or institution that relate to BMJ with the date and timestamps. So you can look here and see the last problem reported was June 7th, and it was only a few minutes long. So access was lost. In other words, their website was up and running, but it was denying your campus access as your subscription should have permitted. But you can see from the date timestamps, it was a fairly short-lived couple of incidents. However, if the faculty member had reported the problem on that day or very near that time frame, you really don't need to do any more troubleshooting. You can tell them with some high degree of confidence what the root cause was. You can say the problem appears to be fixed now. Even if they are in a different location and different network than you are, problem has been resolved and they should be able to retrieve the article they needed. Conversely, if the resolved at time were blank, that means that that problem detected here persists and has not yet been fixed. A long-term problem like that would be a situation you'd want to report to your service contact at the provider to get that access restored. You can see that the same kind of problem occurred back in May on 2 different dates, and in April several times as well. So there's some sort of a stability problem with their authorization system at BMJ, and fortunately it usually is denying access only for a few minutes at a time, but with this amount of regularity, it's going to have some impact on your users. In other words, chances are that some legitimate users are being denied access, and they don't necessarily understand why. And they may be looking for alternate versions of that article, or even paying for it, or sending you interlibrary loan requests thinking that they don't have access to it. So all of these sort of problems, even when they're very brief, do impact library services and costs. So you can look at this system and get a good sense over time, once you've had Callisto operating a while, for how frequent different types of problems are for different content providers. One of the other interesting features in Callisto is that for content providers that still use the archaic concurrent use limit behavior, Callisto can usually detect when that limit has been hit. Because Callisto operates in a limited fashion, acting like a researcher coming from your campus, connecting to the website of a resource to verify whether it's operating properly. If there is a concurrent use limit and it hits that limit, then it will record that fact as an event and can alert you, again, with the email alerts if you want. But the reason for doing this is that it allows you another way to detect the fact that you're hitting a limit frequently, perhaps. Some of these, fortunately, there are not very many providers anymore who operate this way, but when they do, it blocks out your legitimate users if you don't have enough user licenses. So, whenever we discuss this, one of the concerns that our customers often have right away is, how does Callisto itself affect that, and is it causing me to lose access that I should otherwise have? So it's a valid question. The way Callisto operates is that when it does make a connection to a provider website, it will then right away log out of that same provider's website. Typically, the concurrent use sites have a logout feature, and as long as it submits that, it means that the use license was only in effect for a few seconds and not actually likely to affect your real users. If there's a case where, suppose you have some extremely expensive resource like that, and it has such a restrictive number of users that you don't want Callisto to ever even try it, you can disable that as well.